Hey everyone, and welcome to another video. So today I will be reviewing a book called A Thorn Among Fae by Joy Lewis. So I was going to record this on my computer, but my computer is actually glitching and it won't let me record anything, so I don't know what's going on, so I'm just using my phone until I can get back to filming on my computer. So I received this copy of A Thorn Among Fae for free as an ARC review in exchange for my honest review. So this is my honest review. It's part of the Fae Crown. It's part of the Fae Crown book 1. It's the first book in the series. So first of all, I love the cover. The cover is really good. I love the blue and purple. Those are my favorite colors, so it's actually like really cool. So I, first of all, as an author, I don't think my books are the best. I write what I want to read, and that just means that I write what I want to read. Even if what I want to read is trash to everybody else, it's still the stuff that I specifically want to read, so it makes it hard for me to get into books. I'm very, very picky. I have found that thrillers and fairy tale retellings, like actual, where they take the fairy tale and directly retell it, those are some of my favorite books to get into, probably because I don't write those genres. But when it comes to fantasy romance, that sort of thing, I get a little picky. I don't mean to be. So this is going to be my honest review. I don't mean anything bad to the author. All authors, I value them, and the idea, the concept of putting your story on paper and getting it out of your head and publishing it for the world to see is intimidating, and I commend all authors who make it to this point. And I value all authors who tell their stories. And so I don't mean anything against the author. I am an author myself. I am a reader, but I'm also an editor. So I do point out the good and the bad in all the books that I read, and I try to leave honest reviews. So with that being said, this is my honest review of A Thorn Among Fae. So when I first started this book, it was really, really hard for me to read it, and I'm gonna be honest, I would have put it down if I hadn't promised to do the ARC review. So it was very tedious for me to get through at first. Partially because I didn't really care for the main girl. You guys know me. It's hard for me to get into female characters, so when they're tough and snarky, and her attitude really bugged me at first. But when she gets into the Fae realm, the story picks up so much better. And I guess it's because she gets out of her element and she's like a fish out of water. So she starts off where she comes off as the kind of female character that I don't like, but then she gets put in a situation where she's not where she's comfortable, and to me that made me like her a little bit better. But it was very hard for me to read because it's told from her perspective, so dealing with that was really hard at first. So the writing style itself was a negative. I feel like the book could have done with a little bit better editing. There was a lot of passive, like it was written very passively, which what I mean by that, for anybody who doesn't know, is if you say, like, if when you're describing a room, the chair was over here and the tables were that, and yeah, you may be choosing beautiful words to describe it, but you're still saying it was here, it was there, was. And instead of was, typically you can find stronger verbs to replace that. So the chair set over there, blah, blah, blah. The curtains hung on the window, things like that. So there was a lot of passive, phrasings that I found, and it was just really tedious to read at first. Now, the storyline, like I said, when she gets to the Fae realms, the storyline picked up so that it was easier to ignore. That's the thing, like Sarah J. Maas does that too, but her writing style is so beautiful. She does it in a way that it pulls me away from the annoyance or the frustration of the passive writing, and it feels active even though it isn't. So for me, it picked up when she got to the Fae realms. So again, the book could have been better edited. I also did find a few mistakes in it. So, like, actual mistakes that were like typos or misplaced words. I can't remember exactly what they were. So that was the first con that I found, was the writing style was not that great. The writing style itself was okay, but it just needed to be better edited, polished, essentially, is what I would call it. And then obviously the female character grated on me a bit, but that's not anything against the author or even the book, because she was who she needs to be. But it did pick up once it got to the Fae realm. So the next con, um, so the next con for me was sometimes the characters made decisions that didn't make sense. I can't remember the second instance, but the first instance, so the main girl essentially is hired to kill somebody in the Fae realm. I won't spoil who. And so she goes there with the intention of not fulfilling the job, pretending like she's going to, and she's going to rob somebody to pay off a debt, with the hopes that she will kill the Fae who killed her mother. But halfway through, it's not even toward the end of the book yet, and she decides to leave. Her decision to leave didn't make sense because she's leaving without a bounty to pay off her debt, which was one reason for being there. And she's leaving without killing the Fae who killed her mother, which was the second reason why she was there. And so as she's on her way to leaving, she gets stopped, and then she just changes her mind for no reason. And then she decides to actually follow through with the assassination job, but without the bounty, and still neglecting to kill the Fae who killed her mother. And that plot thread was never really resolved or explained, which could be because it's a series, so that may get thrown in later. But it was just like, it didn't make a whole lot of character sense. And there's another smaller instance where one of the characters did something that didn't make sense, but so that was another con that bothered me at that one section where she decides to leave and it wasn't really explained, and then she just randomly changes her mind. There wasn't a whole lot of exposition about that. So yeah, so like I said, it really picks up when she gets to the Fae realm, and I honestly went from not sure how I was going to force myself to finish this book to actually wanting to finish it to see what happened next. And I would say that was one of the author's major strengths, was pulling me in the deeper that I got into the story. So I really loved Leander's character. He was my favorite in this whole book, and he made the book, like, he hooked me into the story and allowed me to want to keep reading, honestly. So there's several twists with his character that I loved, and I didn't see one of them coming, which was really cool. So I also really loved everybody who, if you've been following my channel for any sort of time, you know that I love what I call a good boss fight, which for me is the ending of the book that doesn't necessarily have to be a fight with a boss or a fight with the main villain at all, but it's just the final situation that is the climax of the story. And for me, I call it the good boss fight. Typically fantasies do have a fight of some sort, and there was a little bit of a fight in this one. And the ending situation for me was so exciting. I went from reading 4 chapters a day, which was the minimum I was going to need to meet the deadline, and I think I read like 10 or 15 chapters. So I was on chapter, I want to say 35 or 40, and I finished the last like 14 chapters or something like that, like tonight. Like, I just blew through it because it was so exciting and dramatic and stuff. So the very last ending scene was another kind of minor nitpick for me, because I'm not going to spoil anything, but the final scene came suddenly and there was not a lot of explanation. Now, I'm going to chalk that up to the fact that this is a book 1 and things may get explained and further explored in a book 2. But the ending situation itself was really dramatic. There were a lot of twists. There were a lot of dramatic situations. There was one situation that I thought was really, really cool. And it did kind of reflect the ending of A Court of Thorns and Roses. There was some similarities I could see. And then there was one situation with it that was a little bit predictable, that I was hoping would not be the case, just because I wanted it to take the unexpected turn and not the predictable path. But it was still okay the way that it worked out, and it was still really dramatic. So yeah, like I said, the cons of this book were the writing style was very, very passive and could have done with a lot more editing. And then the main character girl, at first she was just so, like, I had trouble getting into her character, which could be a me thing. The positives was that I enjoyed the story. The world building with the Fae was actually really cool. Not so much the world, but the Fae, their magic was actually like really unique. Like, they had a unique magic system that I personally have not read in another Fae type book. And so for me, it was really special, really unique. I liked seeing that twist and that unique take on the Fae. So Leander's character, the Fae was really good. And the concept and the plot line, it was half basic but also unique at the same time. So it was basic in that kind of, I don't know, not really cozy sense, but it made it easy to read, and it still left you enough where it hooked you and made you want to find out what happened next. Um, but for me, I would say the writing being passive and not being well edited for me was the biggest turnoff that made it difficult to read at first. And it didn't pick up until after she gets into the Fey realm. But once she got there, it was easier to read the book and easier to ignore the passive stuff because there was enough going on to draw me into the world and the story. So overall, that is my review of, let me pull it back up here, A Thorn Among Roses by Joy Lewis. So my final star review on, I haven't decided on Amazon and Goodreads and BookBub yet because you can't do a 3.5. My official star rating for this book is a 3.5 because I feel like it's better than a 3, but I feel like it's not quite a 4 yet, and I feel like there are things that could have been changed to make it a 4. But as far as I know, Amazon, Goodreads, and BookBub make you do either 3 or 4. They don't let you do half star point things. So I haven't decided whether I'm going to do 3 or 4 on those. But if the author is watching this, I honestly feel like your book is a 3.5, and I wanted to give it a 3.5, but platforms, we can't choose in between. So as far as I know anyway, but yeah, that's my review of A Thorn Among Fae, by Joy Lewis. And in fact, I would actually recommend this to everybody because while it's still kind of like average in a way and the writing style needs better editing, if you're a kind of person that doesn't notice that or that it doesn't bug, like if you're not an editor, this book is actually pretty edited. It's just not polished. And so for me, with my editing brain, I notice it. But most average readers are not going to notice that. And this is actually a good book that you would probably enjoy. And one thing I love about this book, I was just pointing my blank Kindle, but one thing I love about this book is that it is clean. It is clean. Like, I would recommend this to everybody who really likes fae and fantasy romances with kind of a thief kind of heist feeling to it, with a dramatic storyline and some plot twists and some really good character backstory, and yet it's got some grit in the way that it needs to have grit, I would say. And I love that. So for me, that's what I loved about Leander's character and his backstory was it didn't shy away from the grittiness that his story needed. And that's what drew me in initially, when we got to that section of the book, was how gritty it can be so it feels realistic and not so unrealistically squeaky, clean, predictable, that sort of thing, but it is clean. So I would recommend this to people who want a fantasy fae romance type book but clean. So that is why I highly recommend this book, even though it's got a lower rating for me, just because of the editing, honestly. And that was why it's a 3.5 instead of a 4. Um, so overall, I did enjoy it, and I hope you guys have enjoyed my book review of this book. If you did, please give this video a like and subscribe for more writing and reading videos every Monday, Wednesdays, and Friday. And in the meantime, if you enjoyed my review of A Thorn Among Fae, then please check out my review of Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. It's very good. It got me started in the fae romance genre and trend and trope and stuff. So check it out. You don't want to miss it. It is a really good book review.